Good. Good afternoon, and thank you for responding to the police department on such short notice. I want to talk a little bit about our solidarity march last night. Working with, I'm sorry, let me introduce who's here with me. We have Pastor Bill Stubblefield, Reggie Dial, 100 Black Men of West Texas, A.J. McLeod, one of our community leaders, and Kevin McConnick, another one of our community leaders that works for Covenant. And I asked them to join me today because we have had an incident that affects our police department and our public, and really dulls the goodness that occurred last night in regards to our solidarity march. Last night was truly heart-moving. It was a chance for us to heal and show that we are together and that we are speaking with one voice. We had at least 400 to 500 people march with us last night from the police department to City Hall. And the support, the joy, and the family that was felt from everyone that was there last night, I still have chills about it. I have gotten calls from people all over the community that talked about how healing that event was last night. Fast forward to 12 to 14 hours. We were notified just after 11 o'clock this morning through our Facebook page that one of our officers had made a post regarding our protest at 19th and University this past weekend. In the officer's post, he referred to members of our public, members of our community, members of our family as trash and rabble. I was notified by Assistant Chief White of this post just before noon today. Once they printed the post and showed it to me, and I got a chance to read our officer's comments, we immediately notified that officer's chain of command and had him respond to police headquarters. I sat down with that officer face to face, and that officer was placed on administrative leave. He is no longer patrolling the streets of Lubbock. Chief White then provided me with a formal memo requesting an internal affairs investigation regarding possible policy violations based on his social media comments. I immediately approved the internal affairs investigation, and that officer is being notified that he is under internal affairs investigation right now. If we are going to talk the talk, we have to walk the walk. His actions, his words were disparaging, they were rude, and they do not represent the majority of the men and women of this police department. To refer to our people who live on the east side of Lubbock or anywhere in the city of Lubbock as trash or rabbles, to be disparaging in any way, is not appropriate. It's not how we treat people, it's not how we train, and I want everyone to understand that I will not idly stand by and allow that to happen. I asked Reggie and these other gentlemen up here to join me because they were here last night. AJ was out, but he was here in spirit. Because these are the folks that grew up here in Lubbock. They know the Lubbock community. I have got to spend time with each of these men. And I think they know what type of man I am. And I wanted to let them know, I wanted to speak to them face to face and apologize to not only them, but to our community for the comments that this one officer made. There is a formal disciplinary process, and this officer will be afforded that disciplinary process. But I want everyone to know that when we have incidents like this happen, I will not hesitate to take action. My command staff that are here with me, they understand where we are. the men and women of this police department understand where we are. And I want my public to understand where we are. Reggie wanted to say a few words, so I'll let him start, and if anyone else wants to talk, I'll give you the opportunity. I'll step over the side.
Usually in a moment like this, I would have the words to say, but I don't right now. I'm hurt. I'm frustrated. I'm mad. All the negative feelings that you could have, I have right now. This happened in my city, the city that I grew up in. And it's just so heartbreaking that an incident like this can take away from the great event, the great solidarity walk that we had yesterday. But I know, like my brothers up here, we refuse to let this one incident take away from everything that we have accomplished. I want to thank Chief and his command staff for acting swiftly to make sure that this individual is no longer on the streets, to make sure that this is not a representation of the whole Lubbock Police Department. This is just one individual. And I want the Lubbock public, to understand that. I want the young people in my community to understand that. They don't take this out on other officers that's doing their job. This was one bad guy that caused the problem. Don't let this be a ripple effect amongst all the other great officers that we have here in our community. So I'm just asking you to be patient with the chief, be patient with the command staff, to allow him the opportunity to go through the process, And so I'm just asking the community to be patient and don't rush to judgment. Don't rush to judgment just yet, but be patient. And I'm pretty sure the outcome that we're expecting will happen. But I thank you, Chief. And again, I thank the command staff for all your support and everything that we've done.
When I saw the post, it was appalling to me that we would even have to be having this press conference during this time across our nation. But like a couple of chiefs have said, we're glad it came to the forefront. We know this doesn't represent every officer in our LPD staff, but we're just happy that LPD is on top of it and is taking matters into their hands as quick as possible. So it's not like the situation where we have 10 to 12 incidents before we catch it. We don't want our Eastside community to feel that they're singled out every time something bad happens, that every incident that happens has to do with some criminalized or thug from East Lubbock. That's not how we want to be represented. That's not who the kids of East Lubbock are. And we understand that most of them are marginalized, and that we live in a community, in a nation, that their outer appearance may spark that within some. But we're glad that our police department and the staff of this police took this matter into their hands and understand that that's not who they want to represent them. This officer single-handedly changed the whole rhetoric of our town from last night's great event to today, where we're having to have a press conference talking about the things that we see across the nation. We're glad that our town is having a peaceful protest. We understand that other people are taking action the way they want to take action, but in our Lubbock community, we don't have that same feel that the rest of the nation is having right now. And it does anger us. It makes us frustrated. It's hurtful that these are the young men I see on the streets every day that are having to deal with this issue. It hurts us that the people we want to love and protect and serve us would even talk in this manner. But we appreciate the chief and his staff and the command and our city of Lubbock for taking action when action is needed. Until we get uncomfortable, nothing changes. We want to be comfortable all the time, but sometimes these conversations are uncomfortable in rooms. And in order for it to change, action must be taken. So we thank you guys, and we thank our citizens for being citizens who care and who want our town to be better. So thank you.
This is getting it right. We ask, who polices the police? The good police. Those that are men of character, those that are men of integrity, those that signed up to protect and to serve, those who took the oath, and those who know the value of what it means to stand behind that shield, to put on that uniform, to be part of a greater community. They don't exclude themselves, but know that they too are part of a greater family within the city that they patrol and police. To our mayor and to our city manager and to the council, you got it right when you hired Chief Floyd Mitchell. You got it right. You did a great job. To those that are members of the Community Engagement Task Force, you got it right when you chose to come together to talk about taking action and producing results, because he is a product of the Community Engagement Task Force meetings where our mayor and police department, city management heard the citizens, and we have an opportunity every month to have that voice. You hear so much across the city how different agencies and different mayors and governorships are saying, well, you need accountability at the local level. I'm so glad we have a mayor who was proactive, not reactive, in establishing that measure of accountability. You know, boundaries are designed to keep things in and to keep things out. One of the things that we've got to do that I've shared with our mayor before is understand we've got to eliminate some boundaries and some barriers that marginalize individuals. There is no mystery that there's a great work that needs to be done to eliminate economic disparities and inequalities and to promote urbanization that's taking place all over the city, because there are great people all over this city that have different skin colors. They come from different cultures and they exercise different faiths. They're everywhere. They're not just in one pocket. And last night they came together as a show of solidarity and unity to walk a walk of faith, to galvanize something that's great. At any given time, you are seeing men who could have been on the list that was read last night. And we have an obligation to protect one another, to keep one another from being on that list. And we trust that this man that has been hired as the chief of police knows that value. That list spoke volumes last night. The sad thing is that there's a list of women just as long that was not read. We're trying to stay off of a list. Enough is enough. We have to promote some positive racial dialogue, some courageous conversations that must be confrontational, not confrontational. And I'm glad that we have a chief that can do that. My call and my challenge is to the faith community that we come together and not mask separation and segregation under a word we frequently use called congregation. Let's have a unified talk and a unified change, because this young man standing right here is our future. I think it's in good hands, but I don't want him on that list that I read last night. And then I challenge our lawmakers, our policymakers, our senators, and our representatives. We have to do something about the laws that govern civil liberty, because no matter what, when this process takes place, it's easy for an individual that, because of that process, to be exonerated and go find a job somewhere else. No, we've got to work on laws that stop these rehires. And I'm passionate about Brother Reggie because this is a man who fought for our country, who served in the United States Navy, who did a tour of duty. That should not be minimalized by this activity. Last night was a success. There are many successes yet to come.
I'm going to invite the mayor to come up real quickly and say a few words, and then I will open it up for questions.
Thank you, Chief. It's a good afternoon. I want to first thank Kevin and AJ and Bill and Reggie for standing here with the Chief and with me and for loving our community. I applaud Chief Mitchell and his team for moving quickly and certainly. Bill and I texted Bill about 7 this morning. I was on my way to my 7:15 meeting, and I texted him, and I told him how pleased I was and how happy, and I'm not sure the language I used, but my wife called it one of her best days in Lubbock, and she's been here 26 years, and that includes the birth of 2 kids and graduations, and I mean that was the glow she went to bed with, and that's what she woke up with this morning, but I also been around long enough to know that even though we're on the right path, that doesn't mean it's going to be a straight path. That doesn't mean there won't be a bump or two, or we'll have to take a little, maybe a detour along the way. And I look forward to the investigation. I believe in everyone's right to have an opinion. But when you take that oath to serve and protect, to protect and serve, you hold yourself to a different standard. And that's what we expect in Lubbock, Texas. So thank you. That's all I've got.
With that, I'll open it up for some questions.
Chief, I have a couple of questions. Can you go into the history of this officer? How long has he been with LPD, and is he in any specialized unit?
The officer is a 15-year veteran of the Lubbock Police Department. He is assigned to our Special Operations Division. He rides a motorcycle.
And you said that he has since been taken off patrol at this point in time?
Yes, ma'am.
And can you kind of go into detail about what that internal affairs investigation will look like?
Yes, ma'am. So once I receive the official complaint, the internal complaint, Chief Nathan White drafted a complaint after he reviewed the comments and believed that they were outside of the policies and procedures of our department. I have that complaint. I approved that complaint and handed it to our Office of Professional Standards, and they initiate the internal affairs investigation. What we will do, or what that investigation looks like, is they will probably pull down all the comments that they possibly can in regards to that, look at the language that was used during that in that officer's post, and they will also look at the responses from the folks who reviewed that post. And part of our policies and procedures are not disparaging our community, not bringing despair to our community. So we will look at the potential violations and what was said and the response that our community had to that, and then we will take the appropriate action from a disciplinary standpoint up into termination or indefinite suspension.
Are there any other officers at this point in time that need to be on alert that maybe responded to the post?
We're not that far in the investigation. I don't know if any other officers responded to it. That will be part of the internal investigators' responsibilities to look at that post and see if any other folks made any posts that disparage our community.
This seems to be very much a social media issue, and to me, it seems like this is something new that the department has faced. How do you move forward forward? Is there social media education that needs to take place with officers? How do you handle this?
There's a couple of things that we have. To answer your first question is, we have a policy in regards to officers' use of social media and how it affects us as a police department. The mayor spoke about it. When you take on this job, I think it's important for everyone to understand, all of our police officers understand that, yes, we have the right to speak our mind, but when you take on this job, those rights aren't the same. We have to understand that when we post pictures of ourselves in our uniform indicating that we're a member of this organization, we take on additional responsibilities, and our words have meaning. They have emphasized meaning. My concern when I read that post and I read all the comments that were given to me by our public information officers is, with what's going on around our community, around our world, has he put lives in jeopardy? Has he put property in jeopardy? We could talk about how it affects us, in terms of, yes, this puts a black eye or diminishes, what was happening last night. But have you put people's lives in jeopardy? We got people around the United States, officers, civilians, getting injured, murdered, property is being destroyed because of the way things have happened in the past that involve law enforcement. We have to make sure that we understand that our words have meaning, no matter where we are. So, yes, we are going to re-emphasize the current social media policy that's in place. We're going to look at that social media policy and see if there's areas where we need to improve that, to make sure officers understand what their responsibilities are to our public and their ability to post. We're going to look at the time that this officer posted. Was he on duty when he posted or not? We need to find that out because that is a potential policy violation. There are several things that need to be looked at, and that's what the investigation process is, and we have to go through that process. Yes, sir.
Question, you mentioned that you've spoken with the officer today. Can you kind of describe what the tone of that conversation was?
I will tell you, because I had, not 10 minutes earlier looked at the information, I kept that conversation brief. I informed him that I was placing him on administrative leave based on the post that he had made and the comments that came after that post indicating from our citizens that his comments were inappropriate. They were disparaging, and they said this needs to be looked at. So I kept my comments with him very short because I know there is an investigative process, and there are steps that we have to go through. So it was just placing him on administrative leave, having him sign the appropriate documents.
And did it appear that the officer understood why this was happening? Was he offensive? Comment on that?
He understands the process. He's a 15-year veteran, and again, we didn't go into any deep conversation at that point.
Has there been any other internal affairs investigation into this officer previously, or any complaints that y'all can speak to at this time?
I can't speak to that at this point in time. I have not reviewed his entire disciplinary file. That is something I will do during the process.
And based off of the policy that was violated, can you talk about any potential repercussions that this officer might face based off of any outcome of this particular investigation?
Well, the document that I received from Assistant Chief White was he believed there were potential violations. The internal affairs process will list out what those violations are, so we're not there yet. Again, we are less than 3 hours from the post, but I thought it was important for our public to understand, especially considering what happened last night, that this is inappropriate in my view, and we are going to look in it, and I want my public to know that we are going to look into it.
What is your message right now to your officers who are probably watching this live stream? What do you want to say to them?
My message to my officers and to law enforcement around the world is be present. Understand what's going on around you right now. Understand that we have a responsibility to our community. I have a responsibility to these men up here and to the women out in the community to make sure they understand that when I look at them, I don't look at him any different than I look at my son, my brother, my coworkers. They're all the same. Any of these guys back here that work on my executive team, we are all the same. We cannot be disparaging toward anyone. That's not our job. That's not your job when you put on that uniform. It is not.
What kind of training does LPD do to discourage that kind of action and comments?
Well, we have yearly in-service training, but even when you talk about the incidents that occurred with Mr. George Floyd, you know, we have de-escalation training. We have over 90 hours of de-escalation training and use of force training. We have continuing education that is required by the Texas Commission on Law Enforcement to talk about the different topics that come up. So there's one initial training and there's yearly training that we all have to get certified on. So the training is there.
Was this officer there last night, last night's march?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure.
Piggyback on Sarah's question, what's the type of training, social media wise, do officers get, protocol when it comes to Facebook, Twitter, any of those places?
The number of hours that they get on social media training here, I'll have to apologize. I don't know the exact number of hours that they get here. I did review the policy. Once this information came to light, I looked at the policy. It is clear, and it talks about your use of words. So that again will be part of the investigative process. Yes, sir.
Do you have a timeline of how long this investigation will take place? What's the duration? Something like this.
As soon as my guys, I talked to Assistant Chief Caspel, who is over the internal affairs piece of it. They have the complaint. The notification has been made. They are pulling down what data is still there in regards to the posts that were made in regards to this. They will review that. I would say we should have something here within the next few weeks about it. It's not something that's going to sit on the back of the shelf and you're going to be asking me 2 months from now what happened with this.
How will LPD monitor for potentially other comments like this?
Well, we monitor our page, and what happened on this particular incident was someone in our community saw it and sent it to us. Our PIOs monitor our Facebook page, and as soon as she got that, she notified Assistant Chief White. Assistant Chief White looked at the documentation, then notified me of, hey, this is what we have. Once I looked at it, in that chain of command said, let's bring him in here because this is the action that I want to take right now.
And going back to training, can you talk a little bit about training that officers go through to deter profiling?
That's part of, well, again, it's part of your initial training when you come on the police department, and we have ongoing in-service training in regards to that. The last big round of profiling came with the part of Sandra Bland Act, and there was an additional 40 hours, I believe, of training that officers had to go through. John, am I correct on that? I don't want to misquote the exact number of hours, but that was the last big incident that occurred that changed the amount of training, special training that we had to go to in regards to how we interact with folks once they're in our custody.
What we saw last night, will we see more of that in the future going forward?
I hope so. I know there are several there's several protests planned. I know AJ has one plan. There are several planned for this weekend. My community engagement officers approached me today because we know there's some high school kids that are planning a march, and they talked about, hey, we want to make sure that we're out there with them, providing them water, letting them know that we're here to protect them. Again, this has affected almost every element, every aspect of our community, and our young folks want us to understand that, hey, they have a voice too, and we want to make sure that everyone understands that we know you have a voice and we want you to be able to do that. So we're already planning to show up out there with a truck full of water to keep them hydrated. We know it gets hot, and let them protest as well.
I just got a question. If a number of citizens are on Facebook and they see a police officer and you make a post that they're concerned about, where do they go with that?
They can, if they believe there's an inappropriate post by one of our members, whether it's sworn law enforcement or non-sworn law enforcement, they can feel free to do what they did today. But I would, so we don't miss that comment, or like, and this was directly sent to us, is feel free to call and file an official complaint. We will look into those. We talk about accountability a lot. Law enforcement talks about accountability a lot. We have to make sure our community understands that we are going to hold them accountable. We have to make sure that our members understand that they are going to be held accountable. I expect everyone up here in this, up here with me, everyone in our community to hold me accountable. That's why I am here. And if I'm not being held accountable by my citizens, by the people who have empowered me here, then I'm not doing my job. Thank you again for coming on such short notice.